Money is ice held in our hands. Hold it still. It still shrinks. The moment we grip it, it starts to melt. We were told, save harder, cut back, endure, fill the account. We lived that way for years. Then, something felt wrong. The balance grew, what we could buy with it shrank. The cart wasn't lighter. The prices on everything inside it had changed. They say it's because prices rose. War, supply chains, greedy corporations. Let's check whether that's true. Not how much prices rose, not even why they rose, but why the system was designed to make them rise. $1, 1971. What is it worth in 2026? According to U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the Consumer Price Index was 40.5 in 1971. By January 2026, that number reached 325.25. The prices consumers face have risen more than eightfold. Flip it around. That $1971 is worth less than 13 cents today. Over 55 years, the dollar lost more than 85% of its purchasing power. Someone who deposited that dollar in 1971 still sees the same number on the statement. What that number can buy has shrunk eightfold. This was not an accident. It happened steadily, structurally, across half a century. 1,000,001 10 years ago. 1,000,001 today. Same number, same weight, same size. But the cart it fills is not the same cart. The ice hasn't changed in count, its size has. And the melting never stops, not even now. Some call it an accident, incompetent governments, greedy corporations, just bad timing. Accidents happen by chance. Designs carry intent. Is what we're seeing an accident? This isn't about anyone's malice. It's about how the system moves. To understand why this happens, three scenes demand our attention. A Sunday night in 1971, a central bank boardroom, and the ledger beneath the vault. Sunday evening, August 15, 1971. Richard Nixon stood before the TV cameras. Under the title, The Challenge of Peace, he made a declaration that rewrote history. From that day, the U.S. dollar would no longer be exchanged for gold. Before that moment, the dollar was a promise. $35 bought 1 ounce of gold. The gold supply kept money from being printed without limit. Central banks worldwide could walk in and take real gold home. That promise held the system's trust together. Nixon shut the gold window. The official reason? Economic stability. The real reason? Too many dollars had been printed. Gold ran short. Vietnam, expanding welfare, trade deficits, they stacked. The promise became impossible to keep, so they deleted the promise instead. From that moment, money stopped being a guarantee. It became paper, held together only by belief. This is where modern money began. The physical anchor, gold, vanished. In its place, central bank judgment, and the trust we place in governments. A ship without an anchor can go anywhere. It can also be pushed anywhere. The newly freed monetary system set a new target. Not stability as in hold prices at zero. Stability, as it was designed, meant a 2% annual rise. 9 out of 10 central banks worldwide share this same goal. 2% inflation every year. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of England. Different continents, different languages, the same number. 2% a year looks small. Compounded over 30 years, prices nearly double. The things we buy every day, twice the price in 30 years. This is not a mistake. So why raise prices on purpose? Economists answer, deflation is worse. When prices fall, people stop buying now. They wait for prices to fall further. That waiting stacks. Spending stops. Companies stop. Economies stop. The Great Depression of the 1930s was that scenario. Cutting wages is practically impossible. Workers resist. But when prices slowly rise and real wages quietly shrink, no one openly objects. Inflation is the lubricant that removes that friction. So central banks deliberately regulate the speed at which ice melts. Too fast, a crisis. Too slow, also a problem. 2% is the dial setting. The ice wasn't melting because of weather. Someone was adjusting the refrigerator dial, on purpose. The third scene, the ledger beneath the vault. Governments aren't the only ones who create money. Banks do too. Someone deposits 1 million won. The bank does not lock all of it away. It keeps a fraction, lends out the rest. The borrower deposits that money in another bank. That bank lends again. The moment a loan is made, a new deposit appears in the ledger. Credit expands. This is fractional reserve banking, the mechanism of credit creation. Once gold's absolute constraint disappeared, this mechanism ran far more freely. In 2020, the U.S. saw this mechanism run to its extreme. To respond to the pandemic, the government injected money equal to 25% of GDP into markets. Direct cash to households, loans to corporations. The result? U.S. M2 money supply surged 26.9% year over year by February 2021, a number never recorded since data collection began in 1959. In 2 years, the money circulating in the economy grew by nearly half. This is how the monetary system works. Crisis arrives. Money is released. Released money raises prices. The cost of that price rise is split among those holding cash. This is how the system moves, not by chance, by structural direction. A small experiment. Imagine sealing 1 million won in an envelope, placing it in a freezer. 10 years later, you open it. The number is still 1 million won. But what that money could buy 10 years ago and what it can buy 10 years from now, are they the same? The freezer shrank the ice anyway, because the freezer temperature was rising, slowly, steadily, and the one raising that temperature was not chance. This experiment was not hypothetical. In 2022, the entire world was inside that freezer. Post-COVID liquidity met shattered supply chains and a Russian invasion triggering an energy crisis. OECD average consumer price inflation broke 10.3% in June 2022, the steepest rise since 1988. The US, 9%. The UK, 11%. Germany, 10%. It crossed every continent. And yet, in the same year, the experience differed by country. In Japan, inflation breaking 4% was a shock. This was a country that had lived near 0% for 30 years. Decades of stillness, then its first tremor. In Turkey, prices rose over 80% that same year. A paycheck received. 1 month later, half the purchasing power. The same global shock, completely different experiences. The difference was not individual thrift or effort. It was the structure of the monetary system and the trust placed in its central bank. And the shock did not arrive equally. When inflation rises, certain items rise first: food, heating, rent. These are not discretionary spending. They are survival spending. The more of our income that goes to these necessities, the harder inflation hits. According to Dallas Fed research, 56.5% of renters reported extreme financial stress during high inflation. For homeowners who had fully paid off their mortgage, 39.3%. Even after controlling for income and other variables, renters faced structurally higher stress odds than owners. Inflation holds another paradox. Those with debt, especially fixed-rate mortgages, can actually benefit from inflation. The real value of what they owe shrinks. Home prices rise with inflation. Between those who hold real assets and those who hold only cash, inflation does not flow from the former to the latter. It flows from the latter to the former. The same 5% price rise lands 2 to 3 times harder on lower-income households. Inside one macroeconomic indicator called inflation, two entirely different realities. We return to the original question: is saving hard enough the answer? Place Switzerland and Argentina side by side. Switzerland holds one of the world's most stable currencies. Early 2025, inflation in the low single digits, near 0%. Nearly half of all consumer items actually fell in price. Over the past decade, Switzerland's managed inflation dropped 0.9%. Swiss households' medium-term inflation expectations are anchored near 1%. They trust their central bank to keep its word. That trust drives behavior. Even at low interest rates, they keep their savings in the bank. Argentina is different. Its central bank printed money continuously to cover government deficits. The central bank lost its independence. It became a government instrument. By 2023, annual inflation was in triple digits. The gap between official and black market exchange rates exceeded 100%. Argentinians do not save in their own currency. They hide dollar bills in closets. Real estate is transacted in 100% dollar cash. Private sector credit in local currency collapsed to 5% of GDP, a 20-year low. Mortgage lending, just 1.5% of GDP. The financial system's intermediary function had effectively stopped. When a tax amnesty was introduced in late 2024, hidden foreign currency deposits surged 130% within months. Where had those dollars been? Outside the system, because the system could not be trusted. The principle of just save harder works in some countries. In others, it guarantees loss. What determines the outcome is not individual diligence or effort. It is the monetary system in which that individual lives. So what do we do? First, change the language. Holding all assets in cash is not a safe choice. A 3% annual inflation rate is equivalent to a 3% annual tax on cash. Inflation is an invisible tax. No notice arrives in the mail. Over 10 years, 26% of the principal disappears. Over 20, nearly half. Once we see it in that language, the options look different. Next, understanding the choice to change form. 35 years of asset return data show a clear pattern. Global government bonds averaged 4.3% annually from 1990 to 2025. But in the 15 years since 2010, just 0.9% per year. Subtract inflation, and real returns were negative. The asset considered safest was the one most reliably melting purchasing power. Meanwhile, global equities averaged 8.1% over the same period. From 2020 to 2025, as money supply exploded post-COVID, gold rose 18.4% annually. When currency weakens, gold tracks its debasement, in reverse. OECD data shows that major pension funds worldwide have already reached the same conclusion. In 2008, equities made up 19.4% of pension portfolios. By 2024, 29.3%. The institutions responsible for the retirement of tens of millions shifted their weight from cash and bonds to growth assets. These decisions were not driven by greed for maximum returns. They came from the minimum defense of purchasing power. A note: this is not a recommendation of any specific asset. The way to protect ICE is not to grip it tighter, but to change its form. It can become water. It can become steam. In any form, it does not disappear. What matters is understanding the structure. Cash is not a tool for preserving purchasing power. Cash is a temporary form for preparing the next move and weathering the next crisis. The standard for that choice should not be a vague sense of safety. It should be an understanding of which direction the structural force called inflation is pushing our money. Now let's change our questions. Not, why did prices rise so much? But, what form is our money in right now? Not, how do we save better? But, is saving even the right method inside this system? Not, prices are rising too fast. But, if this speed is by design, what speed should we be targeting? Prices didn't simply rise. The structure was designed to melt our money. Inflation is not an unexpected problem. It is the default setting. Inside that default setting, holding everything in cash is not the safest choice. It is the most guaranteed way to lose. The money in our hands is melting right now.